I grew up fatherless, and I know the impact of what it did to my life, looking for a father. So as a man that, never really knew how to be a son, I didn't know how to treat a son. And when you don't have fathers in the home, that's why we have so much chaos, because young men don't know who they are. They don't know how to manage their masculinity. That's why it becomes toxic. They're seeking to prove themselves as men. My ministry, what I wanted to do, I wanted to help young fatherless kids know that they do have a father, that their life does have purpose. Right? That's what it means to protect, to cover, to provide. I'm providing you an opportunity to be what God made you to be, instead of trying to make you be what I want you to be or what I could never be. It's no one else's responsibility to teach my kid the things of God. That's my responsibility.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Fatherhood Foundation. We have Pastor Brandon joining us today again. How are you today, Pastor Brandon?
And I'm doing great, Raul. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. I know that last week we talked about servant leadership. You've been a part of the Fatherhood Foundation from the moment, the roots were established, the seed was planted, the water was flowing, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, why did you join the Fatherhood Foundation, and why is fathering important?
Yeah. Well, I grew up fatherless, and I know the impact of what it did to my life, looking for a father, not understanding what it really meant to be a man, in the world throwing a lot at me and me grabbing a hold to what the world was offering.
Yeah.
And, just being lost, not having an identity, not knowing how to navigate certain things in life. And along the way, because of my upbringing, I was around a lot of other kids that were fatherless.
Yeah.
And in the environments that I lived in, that was a major epidemic. So I saw the impact that it had on people and on communities and on our society as a whole. And so once I got saved and started serving the Lord, and I began to read the Bible, I began to notice that God was a father.
Yeah.
And so I began to see God as my father and began to read the scriptures as if God was speaking to me as his son. And it just really changed my perspective, and it changed my ministry, what I wanted to do. I wanted to help young fatherless kids know that they do have a father, that their life does have purpose. And along the way, I got connected with Pastor Robert and Powerhouse and Pastor GF, and became a part of this fathering movement, which I believe is an answer to the epidemic that we're facing in our world today.
Yeah. And I know a little bit of your story, right? And everybody wants to be a good father, but they don't know how.
Yes.
Right? And so
Yes.
You have a son named Connor.
I do.
Who's your stepson, and so you've been like a stepfather, but really he it's a father-sonship no matter what. The step is just in the way.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how maybe some of the mistakes you were making as a father, and then how you fixed them, and then tell me a little bit about what does a good father look like, because everybody says, well, how do you know you're doing it right?
Yeah.
Like, does that mean you just birth something and you feed it and it's okay? Like, what's the responsibility of a father too?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for your first question, I made a lot of mistakes. I was very demanding. I was very hard. I was very rule-oriented in the beginning of my relationship with Connor. I looked at what he did and not who he was. And, through mentorship and guidance from other men that had more experience, and through the Holy Spirit, and God started teaching me that he was brought into my life for me to help him heal, not to create more wounds in his life. And I think that's really the first time where I started seeing myself as a father.
That's okay.
God began to show me, like, this is what a father does. This is what I've done for you. So as a man that, never really knew how to be a son, I didn't know how to treat a son, because I had never had an example of how to be fathered.
That's so good.
So
I totally went the other way when you said he was sent into my life so that I can help him heal and not create other wounds.
More wounds, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And so tell me how, right? Like, what are the responsibilities of a father?
Well, number one is to provide.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean just provide physically, right? We are supposed to provide a safe place. We're supposed to provide food, clothing, shelter, the natural things. That's what a leader, father, parent does.
Yeah.
But also provide identity, provide security, provide vision for that young person's life, provide them opportunities to explore who they are,
Yeah.
right? So provide a place where he can grow and learn through his mistakes. In other words, creating an environment where failure is okay. It's a tutor,
Yeah.
not demanding he becomes something that even I can't be.
That's so
right?
good.
So,
And I think that's so good because sometimes what I've seen, and I'm involved with the youth, right? And I get to speak like at universities, and what I see sometimes is when I'm talking to these students is that their parents are trying to fix the mistakes that they made in their children and live up to a standard that they had never met.
Yeah. We say it's living vicariously through your kids.
Yeah.
I see a lot of dads, right? You know, they're hard on their kids play football because they were never successful at
They
playing
didn't make it to
football.
the league, you
yeah,
know?
man. So now they're trying to kill this boy, and he might not even want to play football.
Yeah.
And what you're doing, and that's so think about that. That's what a father is not.
Okay.
A father is looking for, who are you?
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about how what you does affect me. I'm concerned about how what I does affect you.
That's so good.
Right? That's what it means to protect, to cover, to provide. I'm providing you an opportunity to be what God made you to be, instead of trying to make you be what I want you to be or what I could never be and now live my life through you. That's selfishness. So fathers are unselfish.
That's so good. That's so good. So, I mean, how do you know you're doing the will of God being the father, right? You said you're meant to provide security, create a haven environment where failure is okay, right? Figuring out who they are, not using them to be who you want them to be, but pointing them who God wants them to be. Those are good, and I love to hear those. But, like, does that mean I just, as a father, take my kid to church on Sunday and, you know, then on Wednesday I leave them with the youth pastor and I'm doing my job? Or, like what does that mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, intentionality.
yeah.
Right. I should be the main influence in my kid's life.
Yeah.
You know, I should be, very intentional about spending time with them. I should be their main instructor. Right. I might not know how to, let's say they are playing sports, even though I might not know how to coach football. I need to be there as much as in my power to do so. I need to be supportive in what they're doing. So I believe it's about being intentional. It's no one else's responsibility to teach my kid the things of God. That's my responsibility. That's the way it's been throughout history in the Bible. The father was the priest of the home, and the father is still the priest of the home. And when you don't have fathers in the home, that's why we have so much chaos.
Yeah.
Because young men don't know who they are. They don't know how to manage their masculinity. That's why it becomes toxic. They're seeking to prove themselves as men, so they turn to violence. They turn to sexual, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Turn to drugs, turn to alcohol. They're looking for, what does it mean to be a man? And so only a man can teach a young man how to be a man.
Yeah.
A woman trying to teach a man to be a man is going to make them what her ideal man is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And she's always going to come up with this fantasy of what a man's supposed to be and try to make her son be that.
Yeah.
But you need a man to teach a young man how to handle his masculinity, how to navigate problems like a man. And so that's why we need fathers in the home.
Yeah. No, and that's good. Can you tell me about a time somebody was intentional with you?
Yes. I've been blessed in my life, even though, part of my story is I didn't have a father growing up, and I grew up through institutions. I had great mentors along the way. When I was 15 years old, I was in a juvenile detention center, and I was the only white kid in the facility. And so, I had to fight a little bit here and there. And there was a young counselor there. At the time, he was about 24 years old. He was going to the university, and he had an after-school program for kids. And for some reason, he just liked me.
Yeah.
And I remember I would take the trash out at night, and I was by the dumpster one day, and he said, "Brandon Sanders," because, they always call you by your first and last name in there. Sanders or Brandon Sanders.
Yeah.
I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Brandon." He said, "No, man." He said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Brandon." He said, "Man, who are you? What do you stand for? What do you want to do? Who do you want to be?" I never had nobody ask me that question. And that guy became a mentor to me. And today I'm 48. I was 15 then, and we still talk today.
That's so
He
good.
lives in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He reaches out to me. But he was a major influence in my life. He was a Christian. I didn't know that until later. I didn't get saved until later in life, but when I did get saved, God just began to remind me of the positive impact he had on me. When I got out of the facility, he stayed in touch with me. I went to a boys' home, and he would allow me to come spend holidays with him and his family. He's 24 years old with a 2-year-old kid, struggling to make it, but he brings me there and treats me like I was his little brother or his son. It just had a major impact on my life. And I've had many people like that in my life. Pastor Robert's another one that was intentional with me, who never threw me away when I made mistakes. When I was struggling with Connor, I felt like a failure. The things that I was thinking, the things that I was going through, I didn't know how to manage the situation because I had never been in it before. I felt like a failure as a dad. I felt like a failure as a husband because, my family was in chaos because we had this broken young man in our home. He was angry, and I didn't know how to handle it at the time. So I'm angry because you're affecting me. You're affecting what I'm doing. And so, at the time I was pastoring a church, and I felt like a failure as a pastor and as a leader. How can I lead people in this movement of fathering? How can I tell these men how to be good husbands and be fathers when I got all this stuff going on in my heart? Pastor Robert, he didn't throw me away. He didn't sit me down. He didn't pull my ordination. He didn't tell me you can't preach. He helped me navigate, spent time with me, walked me through it. So I've had many men in my life be very intentional with me.
So I guess what I hear you saying is there's a cost to intentionality. Because, someone took a chance on you, right? Because they weren't obligated to take you in, even as you were a kid, and telling you, who are you? Who do you want to be? That there was a cost that they were willing to pay so that you can find who you are.
Love will always cost you something. True love.
And so a fathering, in essence, is, laying your life down so that the ones underneath you can live.
Yeah.
That's good.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's a good way to put it, but you think about it like, Jesus, he's the example.
Yeah.
The ultimate sacrifice. Jesus, laid down his life for us. Jesus gave up his position of authority, right, to come down here and live among us.
Yeah.
So he's the example of what a man is. He's the example of what a father is. He's the example of what a leader is. And so, even at that time when people did those things for me in my immaturity, I couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
But as I've grown, I realized that's what they were fathering me.
Yeah.
And that's helped me or given me an example of how we are to father others. So, yeah.
What do you do when a person doesn't know how to accept fathering, right? Because I think it sounds good, to have someone come into your life and take on that role of a father figure. How do you know you're doing it well? Or that's right,
Well, I think, there are times where people aren't ready for what you have to offer. And so what you do is you just, you be there when they are ready. When Connor was living with me, there was a time where, he didn't see me as his father. He saw me as his enemy because I'm the man that had to bring discipline in his life. I'm the man that had to correct him when he did things wrong. He didn't like that. He wasn't used to that. And so even until he was 16 and 17, there were times where, he didn't want me telling him what to do. But, eventually when he became a man, he got married. Now he's about to be a father. He comes to me and he says, man, all those things you taught me, all those things you said about responsibility, how you would sit me down and talk about, this is what matters, this is what matters, this is what matters. He says, man, I'm starting to realize that you were telling me the truth.
That's right.
So it's the same thing when you're working with other people. You got to accept people where they're at. Again, it's about them, not about you, right? You speak truth, you speak it in love, and, when they are ready and they reach out, just be prepared to accept them, like the prodigal son in the Bible. Yeah. The father waited for him to come home. He didn't go and chase him. Yeah. So that's the same thing we do.
Oh, that's so good. And it's kind of interesting. I think something that I guess I really honor you for is like you could have quit, but you didn't. Because a lot of people give up on people because the cost becomes too much.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think, you brought discipline into Connor's life and he hated for you. You said you were the enemy and then you became his father. But I think a lot of things that we get wrong, or at least what I've seen, is that on the way from being the enemy to becoming the father, people give up.
Yeah.
And usually it's the father that gives up before the kid. So I guess I really just want to honor it because I was just thinking about that. You say something and then my mind goes somewhere else because man, that was so good.
Yeah. Well, that's...
And hey, thank you so much for joining us today. Fathers matter. The statistics speak it. We live in a fatherless epidemic, but just because there's a problem, that doesn't mean that there's a solution, right? The first Adam brought the first problem. The last Adam brought the solution.
That's right.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and we'll see you here next week.
Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.